This is going to be a series we call Lessons from the Garden. I love working in the yard. I love planting things. I love picking things. I do not love weeding things. I am frugal. I like to be able to repurpose and to reuse or to extend things. And so I'm often willing to take somebody's we're getting rid of this and see if it'll work in my yard. So some examples for this year have been blackberry bushes, raspberry bushes, bulbs left over from Easter flowers, and rose bushes. We live up on the plateau, which means we do not get canal water. We pay for our water. So a lot of the area, a lot of the HOA is landscaped with rock, including our yard. We have a lot of river rock. And I'd show you this section here, but I've already been working on the project. But anyway, we don't love the river rock. We want sort of more landscaping, a little bit more green, maybe some native plants, some flowering plants, a picking garden, any of those kind of things. We've been talking about it for 3 years, right? We've been here for that time. But those are the desires of our hearts, but also the motivation to move a bunch of rock to be able to execute that thing has been fairly low. Until the church needed to remove some rose bushes to be able to fence around the condensing units on the Miller side. So they were going to pitch the bushes, and I was like, no, I'll use the rose bushes. They're great rose bushes. They're beautiful. They smell nice. Instead of throwing them in the trash, I'll put them in my yard. Well, that then sort of lit a fire under me so that I would move some rocks so that I could be able to plant some rose bushes. So this whole section was just covered in river rock, like 3 to 4 inches thick of river rock, a ridiculous amount of river rock. And so I started moving river rock, and I probably moved, I don't know, I want to say a ton of river rock. It felt like a ton of river rock, a literal ton, but who knows? So I moved a ton on that first day. I was so sore I could barely walk the next day, and pulled the river rock, and I put it out there for other people. Do you want any river rock? You haul it, you know, it's free. So I started moving, and I moved enough to be able to plant this rose bush right here. And then in the process, I looked in the yard and I had this volunteer flower. And so I was like, oh, well, I'll put that down. And then in front of it are the daffodil bulbs that we won't see until next spring. And then we have a volunteer, I don't know whether that's a cantaloupe or a watermelon or something. I should really pull it, but I like green things growing in my yard. So who knows what we'll do. Anyway, I moved a lot of river rock to be able to just plant that one plant that I had to prune way, way back. It looks dead as it is, and I'm hoping that the root system is actually taking off. We'll see what happens, but we won't know for a while. So what do lessons from the garden or my failed gardening attempts have to do with ministry? That's the question, and we're going to push on some connections. Let's look at the rocks and the roses. I think they have a couple of things to teach us. The first was getting the roses out of their spot at the church was more ridiculous than I thought. I thought, oh, I just need a shovel and then like a wheelbarrow to put them in, and that'll be fine. So I go out with the shovel and the wheelbarrow, and I dig in, and I can get no movement. And still no movement. So then I'm like, oh, well, I have to move the rocks. So I move some rocks. And then, oh, there's landscaping paper. So then I have to go inside to find a box cutter so that I can cut back the landscaping paper so that I can dig in. Well, then the ground is rock hard. So then I go inside to get some pitchers of water so that I can pour water on the rosebush dirt so that I can get in there. So then I do that. Well, then I need another kind of shovel, and then I need some leverage, and then I need gloves, and then I need this, and then I need that. I probably went back and forth to the shed and to the kitchen inside the church at least 15 times. And it was really crazy because I thought all I need is a shovel and a wheelbarrow, but there was so much more work to it. And I think sometimes we take on projects in the church and we think this should be fairly simple. We just need a couple of tools and a little bit of time and energy, and we'll just do the job. Oh wait, but we need this part. And oh, we need this part. And oh, we need this part. Especially if we're learning to do something new in ministry. If we're stepping out, if we're taking risks, which I think are things that are healthy and important for us to do, sometimes there's a bit of a learning curve, and sometimes we need more tools than we thought. And so it's going to take more time than we planned at the start. The other part of the rocks and roses lesson was moving the rocks at my house, which is a fairly straightforward task, but was such a bear. And you know, I was probably an hour into moving rocks, and I don't even know how much I had moved at that point, but it seemed fairly insignificant at the time. And I texted my husband and was like, now I'm regretting all of my life choices. And, that's overly dramatic. It wasn't all of them, but certainly taking on that project was like, is this even worth it? And I think sometimes in ministry, there are those lessons too, right? We have this worthy endeavor, this thing we've been thinking about and dreaming about maybe for years. And then it's a lot of work. And then it's more work. And then it's still more work. And so we really need to be committed to the cause, clear about what we're trying to do and why we're trying to do it, because there are going to be days that feel backbreaking. And if the end goal is worth it, then we're willing to do the work. Clearly, I like to extract meaning from lots of different places, including my garden and lots of different places in my garden. I hope that some of this is good food for thought for us, for thinking about what it means to do ministry, to take on new endeavors, to move ministries, to plant new ministries, to replant a root system from somewhere else, to think about what could be, to think about the attention that's needed, the care that's needed, the expectations that we set, and hopefully in the process, as a church and as a church discerning about possibilities at the Trinity location, we can be attentive and mindful and reflective about all that we are trying to do, taking on projects that are manageable, and being okay with some things not flourishing in the ways that we hope they will. Take care, friends.